All right, today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and honestly contradictory military forces of the 19th century, the Paraguayan Army. I mean, this was a machine built on total extremes. On one hand, you've got this incredible loyalty and fierce spirit, but on the other, obsolete gear and really fragile supply lines. So let's break it down, layer by layer, and see what made this army tick. Okay, first up, let's just throw a number out there that really sets the stage. Get this, at its peak, this army swelled to nearly 80,000 men. Now, for a nation of Paraguay's size back then, that is an absolutely colossal force. It's just a testament to an incredible national mobilization. But what was this huge force actually made of?
So, when you look at how the army was put together, it's pretty simple, really. About a third of it was cavalry, but the vast majority, we're talking 2/3, was infantry and artillery. And yeah, sure, the best soldiers were often cherry-picked for the cavalry and artillery units, but make no mistake, it was the infantry that was the real backbone of this entire fighting force.
But, raw numbers and charts, they only ever tell part of the story, right? To really get to the heart of what this army was all about, we've got to go deeper than just its size or its structure. We have to get inside the head of the soldier. We need to understand the psychology, the unique culture that created them.
All right, Section 1, the mind of a soldier. This is where we explore the absolute foundation of this whole military machine. A code of obedience that was just unbreakable.
And honestly, this one quote from a soldier, it says it all. If my father doesn't whip me, who would do me this favor? Just think about that for a second. It reveals this worldview that is, well, it's pretty stunning to us today. Harsh discipline wasn't seen as cruelty. It was seen as a paternal duty, a favor. That gives you such a powerful insight into the mindset we're dealing with.
And this kind of deference, this absolute respect, it was everywhere. The whole social structure was incredibly rigid. Get this, anyone in a military uniform, even the lowest-ranking ensign, automatically outranked every single civilian. We're talking judges, government officials, everyone had to show respect. An order from a superior, it was absolute. You just never questioned it.
And this whole paternalistic system, this father knows best idea, it went all the way to the very top. The supreme leader, Francisco Solano Lopez, he wasn't just seen as a general or a president, no. He had nicknames like Taita Guazú, which means the Great Father, and Carai Guazú, the Great Lord. The entire nation was basically framed as one big family, with him as the unquestioned patriarch. And the army? They were his most obedient children.
Okay, Section 2, Uniforms and Identity. So now that we've got a sense of what was going on in the soldier's mind, let's look at what they were wearing. Because in this army, uniforms were way more than just clothes. They signaled your status, your job, and they were a huge part of this very unique culture. So, for your standard infantryman, the kit was incredibly simple and rugged. Picture this, a white shirt and trousers, a red flannel undershirt, and a white belt worn right over it. But here's the kicker. Notice that last point. No shoes. That's right, the average Paraguayan soldier fought barefoot, completely hardened to the tough terrain of their homeland.
And this is where you really start to see the personality of the army shine through. Because while the regular infantry was super basic, the elite units were anything but. The presidential escort, for example, had these incredible nicknames, and they were all based on their headwear. You had one regiment called the Cacaya, or monkey heads, because, you guessed it, their leather helmets had a real black monkey tail sewn on top. Then there was the Acavera, the shining heads, named for the wide, polished bronze bands on their tall hats. How cool is that?
And speaking of those tall hats, they're called a morion or a shako. They weren't just for show, not at all. That hat was basically the soldier's entire storage unit. Think of it like a pocket or a backpack. Inside, he'd carry everything he owned, his comb, whatever money he had, cigars and tobacco, matches, a needle and thread, even his handkerchief. It's just a perfect example of military resourcefulness.
Moving on to Section 3, an arsenal of contradictions. So we've got this incredibly disciplined soldier, right? But the big question is, what was he actually armed with? And this, folks, brings us to the Army's greatest paradox, this bizarre, almost unbelievable mix of advanced tech and hopelessly old-fashioned weapons.
Just take a look at the infantry. The vast majority of soldiers were carrying old flintlock rifles. A lot of them even had the mark of the Tower of London, which means they were antiques even back then. Okay, so a few battalions got slightly more modern percussion rifles, and then at the very, very top, you had just 3 battalions equipped with the good stuff, advanced Witten rifle.
But this is where the story gets almost painful to hear. There was this one elite battalion, right? They had the brand new Witten rifles, but they were stationed at a place called Humaita, and they weren't being given enough food. So to survive, they were told to go hunt local animals. The problem? They didn't have the right ammunition. So what did they do? They fired cut-up scraps of metal from these advanced rifles. And the result? Well, the soft metal just completely shredded the internal rifling, turning these precision weapons into useless smooth-bore tubes. It's such a crucial lesson. Advanced tech means absolutely nothing if you don't have basic supply.
And the artillery? It was the exact same story. The Army had somewhere between 300 and 400 cannons in total, which sounds like a lot, but this arsenal was a total mixed bag. It included everything from modern rifled steel cannons all the way down to ancient corroded iron pieces that were probably bought for scrap after being used as ballast on ships. You just never knew what you're going to get.
Okay, Section 4, the Paraguayan military machine. Let's zoom out a bit and look at the big picture, how this massive force was actually organized and supported. So on paper, the organization looks pretty standard for the time. Your cavalry regiments were made up of 4 squadrons with 100 men each. Your infantry battalions had 6 companies, also with 100 men each. It's a simple, clear command structure. Nothing too crazy there. But the real weakness, it wasn't in the structure itself.
No, the weakness was in the support system behind these units, which was, let's just say, critically weak. Their quote-unquote navy was just 17 small steamers, and most of those were just converted merchant ships. The entire medical corps was led by just a handful of English surgeons, and drugs and medicine were already super scarce. And logistics? Forget about it. There was no dedicated transport corps. Everything, and I mean everything, moved at the speed of slow-moving ox carts.
Which brings us to our final section, a formidable force. So when you add it all up, you have to ask, was this army really all that formidable? Let's weigh the evidence.
And this really is the great Paraguayan paradox. On one side of the coin, you have these incredible strengths, a massive pool of 80,000 men, a culture of absolute discipline and obedience, and this fierce, unquestioning loyalty to their great father. But then you flip that coin over, and you see these crippling weaknesses, mostly obsolete weapons, a serious lack of experienced senior officers, really poor quality horses, and logistics and medical support that were, practically non-existent.
So that leaves us with this final big question. You have an army with almost unbreakable morale and discipline, but you arm them with antique tools and back them up with a fragile supply line. So what does that tell us about what truly wins wars? Is it the spirit of the soldier, or is it the steel in his hands? That's definitely something to think about.